Do you know about the important acts that shaped India? Welcome to our journey through the labyrinth of laws and acts that have been instrumental in molding India into the nation it is today. We'll travel through time from the Regulating Act of 1773 to the 44th Amendment Act, examining the significance and implications of each. These are not just laws, they're the milestones of India's evolution. So buckle up, history enthusiasts, as we dive into the vast ocean of legal history that has been instrumental in shaping India. Our journey begins with the Regulating Act of 1773. This piece of legislation was a significant turning point in the history of India, as it was the first attempt by the British Parliament to regulate the affairs of the British East India Company in India. It established a framework for administration and set the stage for future acts. The Regulating Act was followed by Pitt's India Act of 1784. This act marked a crucial shift in the governance of India. It introduced dual control by the company and the British Crown over Indian administration. This meant that while the company retained control over commercial affairs, political matters were largely overseen by the British government. Next in line were the Charter Acts. These were a series of statutes passed by the British Parliament that further extended the control of the British government over India. The Charter Act of 1793 renewed the East India Company's charter, allowing it to retain monopoly over trade with India. The Act of 1813, however, curtailed this monopoly, allowing other British merchants to trade with India, except for trade in tea and trade with China. The Charter Act of 1833 marked a significant step towards centralization of British control. It stripped the East India Company of its commercial functions and vested administrative control in the British government. The governance of India was now under the control of a Governor-General. The last of the Charter Acts, the Act of 1853, further extended the British Crown's rule in India. It introduced an open, competitive examination system for the selection of civil servants. This system, known as the Indian Civil Service, became one of the main pillars of the British rule in India. These acts laid the foundation for the administration and governance that was to follow. They established a structure that allowed the British to exercise control over the vast and diverse land of India. These early acts were not just pieces of legislation, they were the stepping stones that shaped the trajectory of India's colonial history. Moving on, we reach the era of significant legislative changes. One of the most impactful acts of this period was the Government of India Act, 1858. This act marked the end of the East India Company's rule and transferred the administration of India directly to the British Crown. It was a turning point leading to a new phase of colonial rule known as the British Raj. This shift in power was sparked by the Indian Rebellion of 1857, a massive uprising against the exploitative policies of the East India Company. Next, we have the Thuggee and Dacoity Suppression Acts. These acts were enacted to dismantle the complex criminal networks of thuggees and dacoits that had been terrorizing the countryside. The acts gave the colonial government extensive powers to arrest and punish anyone suspected of being a thug or dacoit. It's a dark chapter in the history of colonial India, with many abuses of power and human rights violations. The Indian Councils Act of 1861 was another significant piece of legislation. It introduced a small measure of representative government, allowing Indians to be appointed to the Legislative Council for the first time. Despite the limited powers of these Indian Council members, it was a small but significant step towards self-governance. Lastly, we come to the Indian Councils Act of 1909, more commonly known as the Morley-Minto reforms. These reforms expanded the legislative councils and introduced separate electorates for the Muslim community, a controversial move that had long-lasting implications on communal relations in India. Each of these acts played a significant role in the administrative reforms of colonial India. They also had profound effects on the struggle for independence. The oppressive policies of the British government stirred a sense of nationalism among the Indian people, leading to a unified struggle for freedom. These acts were pivotal in shaping the political landscape of India and the struggle for independence. With independence came the need for new laws and amendments. The Indian Independence Act of 1947 was a groundbreaking piece of legislation that set the wheels in motion for the birth of two new nations, India and Pakistan. This act, passed by the British Parliament, marked the end of British India and the start of a journey for a free India. It gave India the right to draft its own constitution, signaling the birth of the world's largest democracy. Next, let's talk about the Official Secrets Act of 1923. This legislation was originally designed to protect the secrets of the British colonial government. However, post-independence India adopted this law to safeguard its own state secrets. This act has been the subject of much debate over the years, balancing the need for national security with the right to freedom of speech and expression. Moving on, we have the Epidemic Diseases Act of 1897. This law was first enacted to tackle the bubonic plague in Bombay. The act provides special provisions for the containment and management of epidemics. It was invoked in recent times to combat the COVID-19 pandemic, demonstrating its enduring relevance in safeguarding the health of the nation. Finally, let's delve into the 44th Amendment Act. This act, passed in 1978, was a significant step in restoring the democratic ethos of the country. It reversed many of the controversial amendments made during the period of emergency from 1975 to 1977. Notably, it ensured that the right to life and liberty could not be suspended, and it restored the power of judicial review. Each of these laws and amendments has left an indelible mark on the legal landscape of India. They have shaped the governance, security, and health infrastructure of the nation. From the momentous Indian Independence Act that marked the dawn of a new era, to the 44th Amendment Act that fortified democratic values, these laws have been instrumental in shaping the India we know today. These acts continue to play a crucial role in the functioning of our nation. So we have journeyed through the significant acts that have shaped India. From the Regulating Act of 1773 to the 44th Amendment Act, we've seen how these crucial pieces of legislation have steered the course of India's history. Each act, a milestone marking India's transformation from a British colony to a self-governing democratic republic. Remember, the legal history of a nation reflects its journey, its struggles, and its victories. Until next time, keep learning and stay curious. Do like, share, and subscribe our channel for more content.